Right now, somewhere, your paycheck is losing value and you don't even know it. Not because you spent it, not because you lost it, but because of something that started nearly 2,000 years ago in a place you've probably never connected to your bank account: Rome. Here's what almost nobody explains properly. The Roman Empire didn't just fall because of invasions or corrupt emperors. It slowly bled itself dry through its own money. And the method it used is still happening to you today, just wearing a different costume. Let's go back. In the 1st century, a Roman silver coin called the denarius was almost pure silver, around 90%. People trusted it, merchants accepted it, soldiers were paid in it, and felt secure. It worked the way money is supposed to work, as a stable store of value. Then the empire needed more money. Wars were expensive. Public buildings were expensive. Keeping citizens happy with grain and entertainment was expensive. So what did the emperors do? They didn't raise taxes high enough to cover it, because that would have caused riots. Instead, they did something quieter. They started mixing cheaper metals into the coins: less silver, more copper. Same size coin, same face stamped on it, same number stamped on it, but less actual value inside it. This is called debasement. Think of it like a baker who sells you a loaf of bread, but every year, without telling you, shaves off a little more of the loaf while charging the same price. You don't notice the first cut, or the second, but eventually you're paying full price for half a loaf. By the late 3rd century, under Emperor Gallienus, the denarius contained less than 5% silver. It looked like silver on the outside, sometimes just a thin wash of it, but it was mostly worthless metal underneath. And here's the twist almost nobody expects. Prices didn't stay the same. They exploded. Historians estimate prices in parts of the empire rose by over 1,000% in a matter of decades. Soldiers who were paid in these coins found their wages could buy a fraction of what they used to buy. Farmers stopped trusting the coins and started demanding payment in goods instead. Trade slowed, trust collapsed. Sound familiar yet? Fast forward to 1923. Germany. The Weimar Republic was drowning in war debt after World War I. So the government did what Rome did, just faster and with a printing press instead of a metal mixture. It printed money, a lot of it. At the peak of the crisis, prices doubled every few days. People were paid twice a day because their morning wage would be worthless by evening. There are photographs of German children stacking piles of banknotes like toy blocks, because the paper was worth more as a toy than as currency. This is what economists call hyperinflation, and it's debasement's modern cousin. Instead of shaving metal off a coin, you just print more paper and call it the same amount of money. Now here's where this touches you directly. You don't get paid in silver coins. You get paid in dollars, in a currency that isn't backed by gold or silver at all anymore. It's backed by trust in a government and a central bank. And every year, that currency is designed to lose a small amount of value on purpose. Central banks call this a target inflation rate, usually around 2% a year. It sounds tiny, it sounds harmless. But 2% a year, compounded over a working lifetime, means the same dollar buys roughly half as much in 35 years. This is where you need one term explained clearly. Inflation is not just rising prices. Inflation is your money quietly losing purchasing power, the same way that denarius quietly lost its silver. The number in your bank account doesn't change. What that number can buy does. Why would anyone design a system to slowly weaken its own currency? This is where behavioral economics enters the picture. Economist Milton Friedman spent decades studying monetary policy and argued that inflation is, in his words, always a monetary phenomenon, meaning it comes from decisions about money supply, not bad luck. Central banks aim for mild, steady inflation because a small amount encourages spending and investing rather than hoarding cash under a mattress. But that same mechanism, left unchecked or abused, is exactly what wrecked Rome and Weimar Germany. Here's the counterintuitive twist. The people who suffer most from this aren't the wealthy. It's the people who keep their money sitting still. If your savings sit in a checking account, earning almost nothing, inflation eats it every single year, silently, the same way it ate that Roman soldier's wage. Meanwhile, people who convert their money into assets, things that tend to rise in value alongside or faster than inflation, protect themselves. This is the exact insight behind Robert Kiyosaki's famous framework separating assets from liabilities. An asset puts money in your pocket over time. A liability takes money out. Cash sitting idle under this lens behaves like a liability during inflationary periods because its value is draining away even while it sits untouched. Warren Buffett has said for decades that the best protection against a weakening currency is owning pieces of productive businesses, not stacks of cash. Think of it this way. A dollar bill is a promise. A share in a company that makes something people need is a piece of an actual machine that keeps producing value year after year, regardless of what the currency in your pocket is quietly doing. So why don't more people act on this, even when they know it? This is where the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment becomes strangely relevant, even though it was designed to study children, not currency. In that experiment, researcher Walter Mischel offered kids 1 marshmallow now or 2 marshmallows later if they could wait. The children who waited tended to do better later in life across several measured outcomes. Money works the same way. Spending everything today feels like the marshmallow in front of you. Investing, even small amounts, is the version of patience that compounds into something bigger. Except with money, the 2 marshmallow version doesn't just double. Over decades, thanks to compound growth, it can multiply many times over. Compound interest is the term worth decoding here, and it's simpler than it sounds. Picture a single snowball rolling down a hill. At first it barely grows, but the longer the hill, the more snow it picks up, and the faster it grows near the bottom, because it's now adding snow on top of snow it already collected. Money invested works the same way. Early growth looks small and unremarkable. Given enough years, the growth starts compounding on top of itself, and the final size can look nothing like the small snowball that started the trip. This is why the earliest years of investing matter more than most people assume. It isn't about the amount you start with, it's about how much runway that snowball gets before it reaches the bottom of the hill. Let's return to Rome for a moment, because there's a detail most retellings leave out. The debasement didn't happen all at once, and that's exactly why it worked for so long. If Emperor Nero had cut the silver content in half overnight, the empire would have felt it immediately. Prices would have spiked, and citizens would have revolted. Instead, the cuts happened gradually, emperor after emperor, decade after decade, so slowly that no single generation felt like they were watching their money collapse. Grandparents remembered coins that felt heavier and more valuable, but their grandchildren simply grew up assuming this was how money always worked. That's the real danger of slow debasement. It doesn't announce itself. It just becomes the new normal before anyone can properly object to it. Modern inflation follows the exact same quiet pattern. A 2% yearly target doesn't feel dramatic in any single year. You barely notice a cup of coffee costing a few cents more than it did 12 months ago. But stretch that same small increase across an entire career, and the coffee that cost you $2 in your 20s can cost you nearly $4 by the time you retire. Nothing dramatic ever happened. No single year felt like a crisis. And yet the value quietly, steadily, thoroughly changed. Let's decode one more term before we go further. Diversification simply means not putting all your value in one basket that can be debased or devalued. Rome's economy collapsed partly because coinage was the empire's core store of value, and when that broke, there was no backup system. You have backups available that Roman citizens never had. Stocks, real estate, index funds. Even a modest, diversified portfolio acts like several different baskets, so if one loses value, the others can hold steady or grow. Now think about the Federal Reserve's own research on household savings. Studies coming out of the Fed have repeatedly shown that a significant portion of American households would struggle to cover an unexpected $400 expense using cash on hand. That's not a coincidence in an economy where holding pure cash long-term is quietly punished by design. The system rewards ownership. It slowly penalizes stillness. Here's the twist inside the twist. This isn't a conspiracy. It isn't some hidden plot against you. It's simply how currency has worked, in some form, for almost as long as currency has existed. The Roman emperors weren't evil geniuses. They were solving short-term problems with long-term consequences, the same way governments and central banks still do today. Understanding this isn't about panic for the decision in front of you right now. It means the paycheck sitting in your checking account is doing exactly what that denarius did 2,000 years ago, looking the same, feeling the same, but quietly worth a little less every year that it just sits there. Daniel Kahneman's research on loss aversion showed that people feel the pain of losing money roughly twice as intensely as the pleasure of gaining the same amount. That's likely part of why so many people avoid investing. It feels safer to hold cash you can see than to risk it in something that might drop in value. But Kahneman's own research also points to the deeper trap. The cash you think is safe is losing value anyway. You just can't see the loss happening in real time. You don't need to become a professional trader to protect yourself from this. You need to understand one simple shift. Money that sits still slowly shrinks. Money that's placed into productive assets has a chance to grow faster than the shrinking. That's the entire lesson buried inside a 2,000-year-old Roman coin. So the next time you check your bank balance and see a number that looks stable, remember what that Roman soldier didn't know when he was paid in a coin that looked exactly like the one from 10 years earlier. The number can stay the same while the value quietly disappears. Rome debased its coins for 200 years before the empire finally felt the full weight of it. Your paycheck is being debased every single year, just slower and just quieter. The only difference is that this time, you know it's happening.